Welcome to the Zero G podcast. Today, I have my good friend JD. He is the founder and CEO of Raiinmaker. On this podcast, we're always talking about decentralized AI, and we've got one of my favorite people in the space. So for people that are completely unfamiliar with Raiinmaker, what are you doing there?
So we're focused on specifically the value that each human is contributing to train AI. And so on our network, we've got close to 500,000 people now around the world that are either contributing to the training and advancement of decentralized AI through data validation. So that's helping to validate data sets for models or agents, or by generating high quality proprietary image and video data sets that are being used for folks that are training either computer vision, generative image, or generative video models. And so that's something that that part of our world, we're tapped into both like the decentralized space and partners like that we're going to be announcing coming up that have marketplaces for data for developers and DAI. But we're also tapped into some of the enterprise AI partners like Google and people like that for licensing some of that video data. So that's kind of high level what Raiinmaker is doing.
Yeah, let's talk a little bit about some of the AI training and some people that maybe aren't as deep in the AI space might be like, whoa, like why do we need all these like proprietary data sets to be trained? Like talk to us a little bit about some of the use cases that a client would come to.
Well, it's funny. I was talking to someone recently and the conversation we had was like, we're entering a world where like as a business, if you don't have proprietary data sets in the future, you really probably won't have a really strong business. Just because in terms of AI and the importance of having your own proprietary data that you can use to feed into specialized models, whatever the business case is, that's just at a fundamental level. If we zoom out and you say, well, what about business proprietary data sets? That's where my head goes first. But specifically for us, it's like the demand for high quality, ethically sourced, diverse video data sets, specifically, is where there's a lot of emphasis for us right now. But there's also, we've done stuff with image and annotated image and some other types as well. But having those diverse, ethically sourced, new virgin data is critical for the advancement and continued advancement of AI, decentralized or centralized. You can't, every single, LLM, every single, powerful model that people are using today, whether they're generating images or generating text, whatever they're utilizing, it's been trained with massive amounts of data and a massive amount of these proprietary data sets, whatever they are, right? And so we think there's a huge opportunity there for our users and for Raiinmaker to bring a lot of value. And then if you look at data validation, it's like if you are training, let's just say in terms of the agent side, we just launched a partnership. I think it was like a week ago with Eliza OS. So we had been building on Eliza's framework, a native plugin where any of the agents on their agent framework could hit this plugin, could send output of those agents to the Raiinmaker network for validation and human feedback. So basically, data validation will utilize a combination of specialized models depending on the data set type. So we've got basically multimodal data validation on Raiinmaker network and through the application. And then the humans will also be looking at, depending on the type of data and the type of feedback the developer wants, they're providing that feedback. So when you're developing a model or an agent, getting not only that data sets that you're using to train, the model itself, which even an agent is underpinned by some sort of a foundational model that usually has been customized based on the specific utility or the specific purpose of the agent, right? And what its capabilities are and what it's doing. So I think for us, like, being able to provide either a source of high quality proprietary data sets, or B, the ability for engineers, developers, projects, companies to achieve, data validation, whether it's for just a model or a model that's underpinning an agent or an agentic system, at scale in a distributed manner and in an incredibly cheap fashion, that's where we've been focused as a company.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think maybe we can walk through the Dashcam example, and then we'll get into an agent example, because I always find it's very helpful for the listeners that they could be like, okay, so let's imagine this. We're mounting a Dashcam, and some maybe like Uber is going to pay us and they're going to say like, hey, is this a stop sign? Is the dash cam inside the car? Is it outside the car? Talk to them a little bit about like what, human training and like where Raiinmaker would kind of come into the process to help people train this proprietary data set that's say coming from like a dash cam.
Yeah. So in our case, like, um, the way that we've built it, it's all running through our own custom applications. So we're actually natively capturing video data sets through the mobile app, which sits on top of our own, it's like a special purpose, you call it side chain, right? It's only focused on humans and data and the work they're doing to train AI, interoperating with other blockchains, Bitcoin, ETH, integrated with partners like Aether and Zero G of the future. So like, but sitting at the center of it for us as a company, the users actually, in the case of like a dash cam, they would mount their phone in a way that they could capture the video from inside the car. We're doing most of it through like a questing kind of style. So we're actually curating these data sets and, for specific categories of data sets that are being requested by our customers. And so like whether there's a lot of requests for like faces with human emotions and humans in specific scenes doing stuff, whether it's in the kitchen or sports. So it's like there's a very curated approach we're taking based on the customers that we're servicing and the needs they have for the models that they're training. So when you think about computer vision, which is kind of when you look at the dash cam, data, which, again, putting a phone up on, mounting it or putting a camera mounted so you can get that is good. But, like Tesla's got so much damn data. It doesn't mean that other companies want more of that. I think they do, and so I think there's some need for that stuff. But I think it's, again, looking at the different categories that are, depending on the use case, whether it's a computer vision model, a generative video model, et cetera, that kind of determines the demand for the specific type of data set. And then we just go to our community of, which is in 190 plus countries. And what's cool is we're getting it from like a much more diverse source, from a much more diverse array of sources around the world, which makes the data sets, again, a little more unique than like, just a bunch of tech bros in Silicon Valley, all kind of like, feeding off the same, data sets that they scrape from YouTube or whatever. I think a lot of the generative video models, like at a core, especially open source ones, are kind of being trained on the same kind of like data sets that everybody's been passing around. And so I think to differentiate, you have to, I think as a developer, building a model like this, you need to be able to go outside and say, okay, how can I get access to, high quality proprietary video data sets that I can use to train my model. So it might be, more powerful, more accurate, while also knowing, I guess, having the peace of mind that the data that we're bringing to the table is ethically sourced and coming from diverse sources.
So yeah, let's say I'm making a video game or some kind of motion picture, and I'm like, hey, I need a ton. Like, I've got the stuff that maybe was scraped from YouTube. Who knows if people actually do that? And you're like, but I need more. So I would come to Raiinmaker and I would submit like a quest, and I'd be like, hey, I need XYZ amount of faces. Like, how would it work from the developer or the sourcing or the requesting company?
Yeah, so we have the ability to have like on-demand data requesters, and then we're also going out with a repository of data sets that we've been accumulating, over many months now, and actually licensing that to various partners as well. But like, say you're a developer and you're like, hey, I know I specifically need, I'm looking at my generative model and it's like it's fucking up like human hands. So okay, I want to get a bunch more data sets of like diverse human hands. Like that's one that we actually that we've cycled on a bunch because we know that generative AI and generative video has not always been amazing when it comes to fingers and hands. It's one of the areas that it's struggled. So there's those types of specific. I mean, our ability to do on demand, high quality, pre-processed, fully cleared, ethically sourced, metadata rich video data sets is like one of the main, unique offerings that Raiinmaker has right now. So any developer that is like, oh, I specifically want this, like they can come to us and we essentially source it for them. Even what's interesting is we've got a pretty big base of our users in Africa. So like even like wildlife stuff, like they can literally, and I'm always a little worried. Like I don't want to like commission someone to go on the field and be like,
Yeah.
film a lion. And then it's just like,
Yeah.
they get mauled. Like, we don't want that. So, and we're not ever saying go do this. Like, obviously a
Yeah.
human or user is making their choice, but we can get some unique video data because we've got people all over the world that can do this in a much more decentralized way, which is
Mhm.
pretty cool.
Yeah, that is very neat. And then I would love to get back to the AI agent example because for me, it'd be like I'm a little curious about like what somebody does with virtuals. It's like, hey, I need to refine the decision making of my agent, or hey, I need to. So what would be the use case for somebody being like, I need this additional data from Rainmaker in order to is it make better decisions or
Well, it's a number of things. Like, you can look at rating output, meaning like, hey,
Mm,
every sixth a response or output from this agent, send it into Rainmaker so that a combination of AI and humans will rate it and then give that feedback to the developer based on benchmarks, right? So there's that type of benchmarking and looking at the quality of performance side, like, and then I think there's all that variations on that going all the way to like the other side, which is like moderation. So, like, let's just say you have an agent that's posting on Twitter, or an agentic system that's representing a celebrity is one that we're more quietly having a lot of conversations with folks and saying, look, like, these guys want frameworks to like have some guardrails. Like, what happens if this agent like breaks character and it's representing X celebrity and just goes rogue, starts saying some crazy shit? Like, that's a situation where they want to have something in place, a system that can be looking at what the agent is putting out. If it breaks a certain set of rules, then it could trigger a system like ours that says, okay, first AI is going to check the output from the agent, various specialized models, and then we're going to have a human in the loop come in. Now, AI models are getting very good at this type of stuff in general when they're being directed appropriately in a very specific manner, right? So it's like, where is the world where humans are not as necessary in this loop anymore? I don't really know the answer to that, but that's a
mhm.
conversation that I've had with people, and there's various opinions on it. And I'm always about empowering the individual human, but I don't know if that means they have to do like work, training AI to be empowered. But at this point, like, that's the step forward we've taken in this moment with the technology.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I think you mentioned you had about 500,000 people using the application, and it's quite funny in crypto. Sometimes on Twitter, you'll hear like, "Where are the apps?" But not a lot of people are actually talking about consumer apps that are already built. So, talk to us a little bit about building an app at that scale that's using the blockchain, because I think you're probably one of the few that is actually processing that much.
Well, and I think from day one, that's been our approach and mindset was like, let's build products that anyone can use at the application layer that also are accessing the full power and potential of what Web3 and blockchain infrastructure can bring from a value perspective. And so, I always like to drill back to like 10,000 feet. And I think in our previous conversations, we may kind of touched on this, but, blockchain at its core has the potential to revolutionize the way value is created and the way it's distributed. And so when you look at an application like ours that's looking specifically at the individual human, their contributions, to training AI and the value connected to that, right? And they're being essentially rewarded or compensated in tokens and stable coins. And I think we've paid out up to date well over $2 million in
Wow.
rewards and compensation to users in our network. Um, and that number is set to skyrocket this year and in the next 18 months because of the demand coming now from the business side. So I think for us, it's interesting because, like, to be able to have an application that's super easy to use, anybody could do it, sitting on proprietary, blockchain infrastructure that my CTO helped us to build. And this is, again, is his third protocol. Built one at Disney, built Dragon Chain, and now we built Rainmaker together, which has some similarities, but it's its own unique proprietary thing. And have that application sitting on proprietary federated hybrid blockchain, like a very specific, a very different approach to how we think about blockchain or Web3 infrastructure, and then have that be also interoperable and have rails that can connect that value out into Base or Solana or ETH or these various kind of permissioned EVM or permissionless rather EVM ecosystems. Like, I think we've positioned the company well in our products to be able to leverage the value of crypto and blockchain and bring more people in through an application that anybody can use, right? And so I think that's always been the juggling act we've been doing as an industry is like, I think the amount of friction we've had in a lot of the products over the years has been so high that it's kept the kind of mass adoption wave from fully being realized. Because just even to learn how to use crypto and transact in it and do everything that needed to be done, it required a certain level of time, sometimes money, and definitely like technical knowledge or aptitude or expertise. Now, there's plenty of motivated people that have gone in, they've made money, they've lost money, they've gambled, they've not gambled, like they built stuff, they didn't build stuff. It's been an interesting time. I joke, I've been in the circus for like 7 or 8 years now. Riding the circus train around the world and with a lot of amazing people. I'm more of an optimist, and not that everybody in crypto is good. There's just like any industry, you're going to have people that make short-sighted, like selfish decisions, and do stuff that would be shady. But I think it's, every industry has it. It's not like ours is different. But the difference is that, when there's digital money, that's, a whole new paradigm involved. I feel like the scrutiny is higher and the bar is frankly higher. But a lot of the people that were in this space when I got in all really had the mindset that like, hey, how can we think about how this could transform the world in a positive way? And I think ultimately, like whether we're talking about crypto and blockchain, or we're talking about decentralized AI, or we're talking about building products in the application layer that anyone can use, the same kind of core values is the main thing that's at the root of us as a company. And hopefully, like us as an industry, that still exists in the DNA. I think it's definitely changing, which is just the nature of life. More power, more money, more attention is coming in, more liquidity, but also like a greater responsibility now. And I think the stakes are higher than they've ever been for us to get it right, in terms of, what this technology ends up delivering to humans, especially those that have been left on the sidelines. To me, it's like coming back to why, the why for me and the why for us as a company. Half the planet has been living in hell on earth, and nobody's like giving a shit if they were in, the global financial system, and whether it was the IMF, the World Bank, or whatever systems that we devised, that essentially just exploited these people and their countries, and didn't really care about like empowering them. I think that's where we have the opportunity to do something very different, collectively. And obviously for Raiinmaker, we've committed ourselves to finding ways to do that. And we're not perfect. We're going to make mistakes, and we already have, and you learn from them. And as an entrepreneur, you do your best. But like fundamentally, like that's coming back to why we built the application that we did, and the way we did it was because I wanted like somebody in Nigeria, which we've got a lot of users there, or Kenya, or Southeast Asia and Thailand or Indonesia, to be able to come in and be like, you know what, like I can actually jump in the game, and I can start to get a few chips on the table myself, right? And not just be kind of standing here wondering like, how can I get in the mix? And I think, people can build off of that. And that's our hope, is to be a company that's a catalyst for that.
Yeah, absolutely. One, I love the mission, and you've been on the frontier of so many frontier company like ideas, like blockchain itself, AI. I was talking with Luke from Moonwell, maybe you know him from Base, and he was talking about how like in the future people won't necessarily think of like DeFi. They'll just think like, hey, we're the back end of finance. They won't think about decentralized AI. They'll just be like, oh, this is AI. Do you feel like that's where we're headed towards, or do you feel like we still have a long ways to go?
Well, the reality check is, there's no guarantee of how the story plays out, right? And there's larger centralized players that, I think by and large, excuse me, I wouldn't say that they're like evil people. I think there's people on Twitter and conspiracy theorists and others that might argue that notion. But I'm going to go give them the benefit of the doubt. And I think the Buddhist philosophy is that like everybody actually contains in them like inherent kindness and goodness, right? Doesn't mean that's all they are, who they choose to be, but every one of us has that potential in us to be that, right? Now, if you look at the Sam Altmans of the world and the folks that are like these larger centralized companies, they're driving forward in like a race against each other, and kind of like a PvP of like who's going to build the most powerful AI companies that are gobbling up the greatest share of market and generating the most money and shareholder value. And it's like, that's the old paradigm, man. That's like it. And it doesn't even like, it does not, that those systems do not have the capability. They are not programmed with the ability to see the individual human and the implications of this on the individual human from even just a financial or value accrual standpoint. It does not even see the extraction of value. It just extracts it in a way that, like, in a callous way, almost like a sociopath, right? Versus, like, how can we build systems that are harmonic, that see that there is the ability for this abundant future where humanity is empowered, and we engineer economic systems that distribute value in a manner that achieves that. It's really that simple, man. But the reality is that there's plenty of companies that are kind of playing the game by the old rules. They only care about winning. They only care about how much money. And that doesn't mean that people don't care about stuff. They do. But what ends up happening is, when you end up in these structures, if you're in a company that's owned by Microsoft and you just raised, X billion dollars at X tens of billions of dollars or hundreds of billions of dollars of valuation, now there's this pressure that you have to get to this next milestone. You need to get to this next checkpoint. And all of a sudden, like, what used to be, hey, you know what? Like, OpenAI started out, it was all about, like, ethical AI and alignment. You know what I mean? Like, that literally was the focus of the company. And if people are going to say that that's what it is now, like, I think there's plenty of people inside OpenAI that would come out and say that, the company's values have shifted. Now, it doesn't mean Sam Altman doesn't care or think about those things, but he's got to, even if he does, he would have to balance that against all of the pressure that there is to continue to move to the next checkpoint on that old paradigm kind of journey of, like, how you scale a company. And I think that there's, whether it's our company and others that are out there, it's like, how do we redefine those paradigms in a way that's, again, taking the individual human and empowering them, more and more, distributing more value back to them in a way that, creates a flywheel effect that supports an entire ecosystem of companies and users that are choosing that path, right? And it's not an easy thing, man. That's why it's like, well, how does this really play out? I don't know the answer, but I know that more companies are going to have to build in a way that users are able to use the products that they're building. They're leveraging, the principles, first principles approach to, like, the empowerment of individuals financially through blockchain and crypto and the ownership of value and data, right? And then thinking, like, there's a lot of us all kind of working, with a similar mindset towards similar problems. And we try to work as much as we can, not just me as a company, with those companies, whether it's Zero G or Aether or, Sentient or fill in the blank. I mean, we're literally talking to everybody. I know a lot of these companies, and we're trying to find more and more ways to collaborate with each other, to push forward an alternative version of, especially when it comes to AI. Now, I think elements of what makes sense to distribute within the process, right? Like, so whatever ends up being the parts of this value chain that should be distributed because it creates better unit economics in general, creates better efficiencies, like, those things will end up probably naturally, like, kind of filtering their way into the broader what is AI, right? So I think any companies that can scale, like, for us, like, we can already do stuff, at a cost that's less than a lot of maybe centralized competitors could do it in certain ways, right? Is the quality there? I think we're close, but it's like, that's the dance. And so if you're Microsoft and you have to choose between two different companies, one that has a more decentralized and a more centralized approach, you don't necessarily care unless it in some way is affecting one of those things you care about when you're making the business decision, right? So I think that's part of what we have to look at, is we just actually have to be better. We have to be more efficient, more profitable, more scalable. We have to compete, right? And we have to compete not just in the old way, but also in a new way of saying, look, if people also see that there's a choice to, connect into companies and systems that are doing this differently in a way that cares about the empowerment of the individual human, well, that also could shift the dynamics as well. Now, that's a tougher ask, because humans generally in the modern age, if you were going to ask someone, it'd be like, well, humans are generally lazy. They really only care about themselves. It's like, we have such a low opinion of ourselves and human nature. And it's almost like we forgot that, like, this is the funny thing to me. People act like human nature is this fixed thing. And it's not. Like, to even think so, like, there might be certain things about our essence that are core to who we are. Like, my mom would say, every human has the potential for everything from Mother Teresa to Charles Manson. That was like what she would say to me when I was a kid. And it's like, every human has that spectrum of potential. It depends on where on that spectrum it's a nature nurture thing. Like, some of it is like in the DNA of who they are and who their parents were and how they were raised and the shit that happened until they were age 7. If you listen to the early childhood psychology people, then some of it is like the choices that they make along the journey, or that we make. Right. And so, from that perspective, it's like, human nature is not a fixed thing, and we're not inherently just lazy, weak individuals. Now, artificial intelligence, first it started with these, right? And now with AI, like humans are being shaped by technology at an ever increasing exponential rate. So the other thing we have to look at is how is this technology shaping the way that we think, the way that we behave, the way we interact with each other, the way that we see the world. And I think ultimately that's like the bigger, maybe that even is the bigger picture that we're missing right now because we're focused on all this other stuff about the technology and its implications.
Yeah, I mean, a lot to unpack there, and so many interesting points. One thing I think a decent bit about is like how much AI has changed everyone's outlook. I think it is, if not as impactful as the smartphone. I think I talked to ChatGPT, Claude, or some equivalent 20 times a day would be my guess. If not, maybe a little bit less, but we're all going to become like AI native sooner or later.
Yeah. And so then the question is like, and this is where everybody who's trying to zoom out right now before it's too late and we take it for granted is saying, well, what's the data that these models are being trained with? And if like because you're interfacing with it like it's a new friend, and like you don't know
Yeah.
if your friend Claude is like good or not. You don't know. I mean, Grok's kind of cool, but he's also kind of an asshole, right? And
Yeah.
it's just that they all have kind of a little different personality and flavor, but it's like, it's going to shape the way that humans think. It already is,
100%.
but I'm saying that's going to continue to increase. So that's where it's like, okay, let's take a step back. Let's not that we need to hit pause because it's not going to work. Like the race is already on. The gun's been fired. China's racing ahead. OpenAI is out on the field. The U.S. government's kind of doing whatever we're doing, fumbling around, handing a bunch of money to people, hoping that the smart people figure it out, right? The Larry Ellisons and the Sam Altmans or whoever. So like, there's this or Elon. I mean, there's this kind of open field of like battle happening about who's going to kind of define this new technology that everybody knows is going to be fundamental to human experience, at least for the foreseeable future. What this evolves into with quantum. Quantum is a whole other realm, right? And we're just now starting to look at that. Robotics. Think about artificial quantum and robotics and where those things converge. I mean, man, we're heading into, the brave new world. We knew it was coming, right? But the question again comes back to me is like, if we can come back to the values that matter. And I know it seems like hokey or cheesy, but the reality is it's the only thing that I think in my view can save humanity. Like, and really like can define our future in a way that's more utopian than dystopian, is to say that the values at the center of all this is what has to be where there is no compromise. Like if we can find the common ground there, which is kind of like America was founded with kind of a similar mentality around governance, and at a time when democracy was just an idea or a dream. I think we're going to have to think in a way about paradigms of thought around value and technology in our relationship, and be willing to redefine how we see those things in a way that we can chart our course forward in a way that creates a world that we want to live in as humans. Otherwise, we're just going to basically create Skynet and as they say in Deadpool, like fuck this planet into a coma, and then that's it. I don't know how it looks after that. I don't believe that'll happen. I think that I tend to go on the optimistic side that we're going to make the right people will intervene at the right times to guide the path of humanity to a more positive result or outcome. But this is the moment where for us to define it. And I think there's a lot of people in not just decentralized AI, but in AI in general. I think some of the smartest researchers and scientists that I've been able to connect with that are light years ahead of me in terms of understanding the technology and how it really works. Are already saying like they're the ones that actually have been sounding the alarm for longer and saying, guys, like we're kind of missing the point here in terms of like how we should be thinking about the trajectory of this technology and how we're building it and the implications of it.
Yeah, yeah. The alignment question, always an interesting one to go into. Now, I know you're a very busy guy. So finally, where can people learn more about Rainmaker and connect with you online?
Yeah, so the raiinmaker.com is the website, and through there you can find our mobile app to download and start earning for training AI in a variety of ways and having fun. You can also generate some images, and we're actually going to be launching a generative video model that will be live here in the next couple weeks as well. So you can check the website out. We're on X at Rainmaker app, I believe, as well. And yeah, I think those are the two main spots to catch us. And I'm Commodore Gonzo on X if you want to follow me. And
Nice.
yeah, it's been great talking with you, Jax.
Absolutely, always a pleasure. And I will put all the links in the description. Everyone go interact with JD. Go follow him. He is an amazing guy to chat with, and I hope to see him at a conference soon. To all the rest of the people listening, let's continue building the future of on-chain AI.